you very much for coming along to our general discussion of global climate and environmental change and how it affects us locally. We're very fortunate this evening to have a guest for the evening to help us understand a bit of what he's been organizing, both here in Massachusetts and nationally. Elders Climate Action. He's the founder and director of the program, and he's here to tell us something about it. What we want to do is make sure to take the references that'll be up on the screen that you'll get later on, and his name and his email address and the like, so you can get in touch, get active and get involved with what he's going to talk to us about this evening. This is Grady McGonagill, head of the Massachusetts chapter of Elders Climate Change Action. Thank you very much, Grady, for coming along. Perhaps you can fill us in a bit as to how you got involved in this and what it is, what you think it means for us.
Sure, Tim. Thanks for the opportunity. Really appreciate being able to talk to folks about something that's close to my heart, as you know from our conversations. There's a history to my getting engaged that I think might be worth sharing. I've not always been an activist. That is, 50 years ago, I was active in opposition to the Vietnam War, was a conscientious objector. And within recent years, I've decided that I'm a conscientious objector to climate change as well, and decided it needed my full-time energy. So I wound down a consulting and coaching career of 30 years in order to focus on climate change. But the seeds of my current activism go back probably 25 years. When I read in the early 90s about the demise of a creature that I had grown up around in central Texas. I lived in Austin, Texas, and like most little boys my age, I made life miserable for the Texas horned toad. It's a local creature that we would chase and put in shoeboxes. They were famously resilient, almost mythologically so. The story has it that one of them was sealed into the foundation of a 19th century Texas courthouse, and then when it was torn down 100 years later, it was still alive. You can believe that or not, but they were supposed to be able to live for 100 years on the desert with just a drop of water. In any case, despite that reputed resilience, their numbers were declining rapidly, presumably in response to human activity of some kind. And it just, when I read that, I'm not a highly emotional guy, but it just broke my heart, and I started sobbing. It just touched me so deeply. And in that moment, I resolved that I needed to do something about the destruction of the environment. We didn't yet have the term climate change, although it soon came into currency. And so that was the seed of what over the years has grown and grown to a full-time commitment. I began volunteering time to use my coaching skills for nonprofit environmental advocacy organizations, and I started a couple of multi-stakeholder dialogue projects around forest management. And then reading Al Gore's book in 1989, The Earth in the Balance, was eye-opener for me. But then more recently, the writings of Bill McKibben, who's been writing for at least 25 years on this topic, and became an activist when he realized that his books weren't having much impact, but they did have an impact on a few people. And it was an article of his in the Rolling Stone in 2012, I believe, called "The Global Warming's Terrible New Math," which showed that we already had 5 times as much oil in the possession of oil companies, and state-owned or private, than we could afford to burn, or we would get to a tipping point beyond which there would be no return. And so I felt I needed to do more. So I began to let go of my consulting and look for opportunities to put my shoulder to the wheel in some way for the climate movement. I found myself getting on a bus in 2013, right after Obama's inauguration, to go down to Washington, D.C. for a protest at the Washington Monument and march on the Capitol and protest against the Keystone XL pipeline in particular, and a call for climate action in general. And I began volunteering time as a coach and consultant to nonprofit advocacy organizations that were addressing climate change. And at some point felt called to get more engaged just as a citizen activist, initially through the Citizens Climate Lobby, which attracted me because of its policy of, we call it carbon fee and dividend. That's putting a price on carbon that would reduce demand and increase incentives for renewables. And it was while I was doing work with CCL that I got a call in summer of 2015 inviting me to attend something called Grandparents Climate Action Day. Now, I didn't know there was a Grandparents' Day. Turns out there is, second Sunday of September every year. And that year, it was the occasion for the first project of a new organization called Elders Climate Action, which was modeling itself after the Citizens Climate Lobby practice of having an annual conference in Washington combined with workshops, speeches, but then a day of lobbying, going around knocking on the doors of your congressmen and senators. And so there's something about that framing of Elders Climate Action, so appealing to my status, not just as somebody who's getting elderly, I'm now 73, but elder, with connotations of the sort of wisdom councils or seniors in societies that have more respect than ours does for folks who are getting old. Something about that appealed to me, and the experience in Washington of talking to people from addressing them at the level of their heart around the concern around children, grandchildren, just really resonated. I remember meeting with Senator Elizabeth Warren, who of course needed no persuading that climate change is an issue, nor does Senator Markey. We're lucky in Massachusetts to have two senators who are very supportive. But when we began talking about her grandchildren, tears came to her eyes. And it's at that level that I like to speak to people. We've learned that facts and figures don't tend to count for much in terms of changing minds. But if you can touch people's hearts, that can make a difference. And so that's how I came to be doing what I'm doing.
Right. Well, let's in fact take a look at some of the activities that Elders Climate Action has been engaged in, both here in Massachusetts perhaps, and then on a national basis. You mentioned they got themselves organized from 2013 onwards, basically, and there has been some national attention to their efforts that we've been able to see. If we pick up any of the national press, you can see that their logo's been out there for a while, Elders Climate Action, and their statement, in a sense, very succinct: preserving our planet for the grandchildren and all life.
Right. And just to elaborate on that a little bit with our mission statement, which would be your next slide, we mobilize elders, by which we mean typically people at or near retirement age, throughout the U.S. to address climate change while there's still time to protect the well-being of our grandchildren, future generations, and for that matter, all life. So there's a limited time window, and we have a sense of urgency around doing something in that period. So we're a project of a larger umbrella nonprofit organization, the Conscious Elders Network, which has as its purpose helping elders connect with a sense of mission in their later years. There's reason to believe that having a sense of purpose or mission is a really vital ingredient to a healthy elderhood, people actually live longer, we've learned, if they have a sense of purpose. And so the first project to emerge out of that group, which formed in 2013, was Elders Climate Action. It's entirely volunteer-led. Nationwide, there's over 5,000 members. In terms of who subscribes to our newsletter, we've got representatives in all 50 states, and even beginning now internationally. Most recently, New Zealand is interested in starting something up. So there's 5 local teams or chapters in 5 states. We have many partners. So on my return from Grandparents Climate Action Day, I decided to form the first state chapter. That would be your next slide. To take to the state level some of the initiatives that we promote nationally. So as I mentioned, the Citizens Climate Lobby as a carbon fee and dividend priority. Well, we adopted that because we think that that really is the single most effective policy lever, putting up a tax on carbon at the source, and then returning the revenues that were collected back to the public, so that it's effectively carbon neutral. Revenue neutral,
right?
And which is important for attracting the support of conservatives as well as liberals and Republicans as well as Democrats, because it for all practical purposes, is not a tax. It's just but it does make carbon more expensive, reducing demand and providing a level playing field where carbon is not being subsidized as it presently is. And then we would prefer, although these are eroding at the moment, we backed Obama's Clean Power Plan. We're in favor of divesting from fossil fuel investments, pension funds, and even individual accounts. But then the action now, given the current administration, is really at the state and local level. And that's where I decided to focus by forming a chapter, next slide, in Massachusetts. And that was the first of what are now 5 chapters. And then we have several forming in other parts of the country. But so I think what I'll do is tell you a little bit more about Massachusetts.
Sure.
I'll go ahead and use your next slide if that's okay.
Okay.
So we've got probably 30 active members. We come together once a month, and now have a newsletter that's got a robust membership, readership of 350, and a very active Facebook page. And just this last week, we launched a website. And the way we focus our energies, we decided early on that there was a real opportunity in Massachusetts to try to influence the legislature. That is, this would not be true in every state, but in Massachusetts the last couple of years, there have been a number of bills that have been proposed that have the potential to address climate change. And so that looked like the point of leverage that was most attractive. So that has been our statewide priority. And then we have teams of people who have more particular concerns, initiatives. One person organized a climate change art exhibit. Another has a passion for getting trees planted in local communities. And in a third, we're developing, each number of us are learning to kind of tell our personal story of how we got involved in climate change, to share with others in the hope of inspiring them to do something similar.
Okay, well, let's in fact, a little later, we'll try to get out to the website if we have a secure connection here on the web, to look at their newly created web page and the way it links to other things going on. But for the moment, let me emphasize with you what the chapter has been doing here in terms of coordinating strategies for influencing state legislature. If you went to, in fact, their home page, you'll see one of their first images is of a large group of ECA members standing on the steps of the Capitol in
Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah.
And in fact, they make themselves felt as a presence. I think that's a very important aspect of your work that ought to be highlighted in a way, because it enables us to see that the elders are one of the most important voting blocks in the entire country in terms of the numbers of people who show up and the proportions of that age group that actually votes. They have a really inordinate degree of power. And if that group can be mobilized around an issue and get irritated enough to say, hey, listen, we're going to challenge what you've just said, and what you said makes no sense, one legislator after another is going to feel the heat, it seems to me. And we have a chance, in effect, to have a new kind of impact.
Well, I think that's right. You've said it well, Tim. What did attract me to a group calling itself Elders Climate Action was the focus on elders as a constituency, because they do vote in higher percentages. Many of us have more time because we're not worried about going to work to the extent that we've retired. Most of us have. Many of us have more resources, both money and connections. Things that we've accumulated in our lifetime. So there's a lot that we have potentially to offer. And now that elders are living longer, I think there's a new chapter opening up for many of us. It's not just golf in Florida anymore. It's the possibility to have a second career, non-paid career, as a volunteer activist in some area of passion. And so we, of course, hope to tap into that passion and attract people to climate change.
Well, and here's an example of it. These are rotating photos off of their homepage. As I said, right there on the steps of the Massachusetts State House, they're saying, act now for all life, act now for future generations.
Yeah, and there you see our bright green T-shirts that and sweatshirts. We like to be visible when we show up at
That's
hearings
right.
or protests.
It's really great.
And people will often come up to us just based on having seen a T-shirt and be curious.
Sure, and ask what the heck's
what we
going
do.
on.
Yeah.
You can get on their page and start scrolling down on it and see you can, in fact, link to the various issues that they've got highlighted here. Putting strategy into practice. ECA, that's Elder Climate Action, Mass, builds a structure for program development and innovation. Here you can get updated state legislation update. Fate of energy and climate bills is cloudy as legislative season draws to a close. Okay, get informed, get connected, join in, sign up, and in fact start acting as ECA has challenged us all to do. It's really quite an innovative effort here, and plenty of ways to get connected. There's even a webinar series, Elders Standing for a Sustainable and Just World. This is really a new portal for all of you to start exploring. I don't think they have any restrictions on who counts as an elder.
No, in fact, we have one member who's 30 years old.
There you go.
One of our most active members. He just felt called by the mission, and he felt we were well organized in a way that made him think that it could be a way to make a difference.
Right. Well, let's take a look at in fact, the ways some of them have made a difference. This is the brief statement of it that was captured by Yale Climate Connections. nationwide inspiration from Grady McGonagill, right here, the founder of the Massachusetts chapter of Elders Climate Action. And we're very fortunate to have him here this evening. So, when you want to get engaged, now that you will want to get engaged, you should start pursuing some of the material. Grady himself is, as he say, the coordinator of the council member nationwide. Nationwide, you ought to be aware some of the impact that they've been having in Washington, D.C. As part of the People's Climate March, they showed up. Take a look.
Can you come on up? Leslie, can you talk about why you're here?
I'm Leslie Wharton. I am with Elders Climate Action. We're a national group of elders who've come together to basically protect our children and grandchildren and those who are going to be after us. You know, most of us, we're not working. We're not trying to get jobs. We're not trying to get promotions. We have that moral authority that what we're looking out for is not our personal interest, our advancement, but the legacy we leave behind. Our families, our children, the people who are going to carry our DNA into the future. And so we have been pushing Congress to put a, tax on carbon, make the externalities, pay, and to support federal action. And we're also doing a lot on state and local action. We've got chapters in Michigan, in Massachusetts.
Yes, right here in Massachusetts with Grady. And we're really grateful that you've come by, Grady, today to give us an introduction to this. We'll probably sign off here shortly, but I'll try to include some information for people to link to so that they can get in touch with you if they want to follow up from this.
Well,
I
yes.
hope they will.
And let me just add that although we always have some chapter-wide priority, and at the moment it's the legislature, we put a high priority on encouraging individual members to identify and pursue some passion. It's a place where people can learn and grow, get support for what they care about, and get engaged in some particular way that appeals to them.
Okay, well, do get in touch, particularly with this new kind of citizen science alliance that's emerging around the country and around the world. It's not unique to Massachusetts, but we're catching up, and with people like Grady who are taking the lead, we're going to get there. Thank you very much, Grady, for coming along this evening.
Hey, Tim, thank you very much.
This will be a way in which you can reach out long after other people have decided you're not active anymore. You can become active in a very effective way.